Hello, everyone. So, this is Lala, and today I'm going to be talking about the fifth season of the challenge, which is called Battle of the Seasons. And this one is the 2002 one since it premiered in 2002. With this season, we saw a lot of changes. One is that they ended the two teams format, with it just being solely world rules and solely the real world, and they made things a bit more individualistic where they took pairs from each Road Rules and Real World season. So while there are still teams, there are pairs within those teams as well, and they get evicted or booted as those pairs. There's also a more competitive spirit to this since it's all the pairs competing with one another or competing as individuals and they're competing against one another and the top few pairs end up in the inner circle, which gives them the control to vote people out. While it isn't the eliminations that we know, the vote offs I did find to be much more interesting, and it kept things moving since it showed people that you're not going to coast the entire season. People will go, and you need to get ahead to stay ahead. What's unfortunate is that they boot the eliminations halfway through the season, and I guess they go back to a similar format of the first four seasons, where no one is booted within the second half of the season. Another issue I have with the season is that while there are a lot of likable, funny, and dramatic people on the season, there are a lot of them that are just red t shirts. And for people who don't know, that term is used for people in Survivor who are given very minimal edits to the point where you don't really know who they are as characters, and they're pretty much just background people. Anyways, I did like the increased drama throughout the season, as it definitely kept things interesting, and of course, with the increase in competition, that was bound to happen. At the same time, it still has some of the flaws of the earlier seasons because it isn't really the challenge as we know it yet, but is getting close to there. Okay, so starting off the season, and it's really interesting watching this, since some of the returning challengers have not been on in years, with the exception of Extreme Challenge, which was just the prior season, and there are a lot of returnees here. They decided to get two people from the most popular Real World and World Rule seasons, and they all jump off the parachute or the helicopter in a parachute to land on their location. Mark from the first season of Road Rules and the second season of The Challenge, and Eric from the first seasons of Real World and The Challenge are hosting this season, and I could only imagine how hyped up the fans were to see the big stars from all of these shows together at the time, since crossovers in reality TV in general was not popular in the early 2000s, especially in something like this. We get some updates on a lot of the alumni from their last Real World Road Rules season or their last challenge season. Holly and Chadwick are currently married and didn't meet on their season, and Bilu decided to bring her child onto the show, which is an interesting experience, and I'm shocked production allowed it, since it's something that they would not allow today, or even a few years after this. Norman makes it clear that he wants Beth gone, as she talks about how she sold off the rights to some movie that I guess that both of them were working on. So there's some out of game information that Beth would be infamous for, and she rants about him being an unsuccessful 40-year-old, which is very ironic since Beth would be criticized for being older for a lot of her challenge career after this. Bilou refuses to show up without her baby and has a tantrum about it. Stephen and Cora end up getting into it about who effing knows at this point. I am shocked that the production brought back someone who slapped a woman on his real world season. The challenge is called Hangman, where they're being pulled up from the sea up to a hanging surface. Or from a hanging surface, and the people who get the most points win. And there's a scoreboard for the season, and this is something that they would use for the next few seasons, actually. The top three from each show scores are in the inner circle where they will vote off one pair from each show. So Coral and Mike, Danny and Kelly, and Becky and Norman are in the inner circle for Real World, and Holly and Theo, Chadwick and Peggy, and Emily and Timmy are in the inner circle for Real World Rules. Beth knows that her ass is grass, and Stephen knows that he is in trouble, despite giving Coral an insincere apology, which just pisses her off more than anything. Bilou also thinks that she could end up going home, and the road rulers are discussing whether they should boot her and Chris or not, but there are a bunch of middle players that could be threats. It seems like Theo brings up Yes and Veronica's name first, since they are the fourth place couple on the road rules, and they also consider Adam and Gisela for similar reasons. Hopefully, I'm saying her name correctly. And the married couple like the idea. The real worlders are doing something different, where their strongest team is equal to their weakest team on road rules. Beth and John know that they are in trouble, and she knows that things are going to be very clicky. The real worlders vote out Beth and John, and the road rulers vote out Veronica and Yes. Beth was always as snarky and entertaining as she could be, but her unlikability getting her booted immediately was not shocking, though I do think it is unfortunate from an entertainment point of view, especially compared to a lot of the red t-shirts that last a decent amount of the season. John was forgettable on the first season, and he didn't do anything here, so I'm not shocked that he didn't return after this season. Yes, and Veronica really didn't get a chance to do anything, but it was a blindside that showed that the game is tough and nasty. Kind of like Big Brother 2, where it isn't happy go lucky. But it will definitely change how Veronica plays the game in the future, and that I'm looking forward to. So there's a hurricane that is approaching Mexico, and we have a lot of people bashing Holly and Chadwick for the move that they made. Billy wants to leave the game, and Mark tells the cast that the challenge has been cancelled due to the hurricane. Blue's baby was sitting by their window during the hurricane, and everyone is freaking out over this. Blue freaks out on Chadwick because she was told that her baby was by the window. Blue tells the couple that she wishes that they never have a child because of what they did to herself and her child. And the couple stands firm in their opinion. How do you just wish harm on someone like that? Anyways, Jaleesa or Gisela, I don't know how to say her name, is the only person who has been voted out before, as Adam and the others voted her off during their road rule season, and the two of them end up arguing about their strategy, where he wants to beat the weakest team, which is something that definitely follows him in his next season, and she wants to boot the biggest threats. The hurricane gets worse, and the cast is stuck in the house, so they're creating their own ways of fun and have some sort of toga party, where Hartley and Chadwick isolate themselves from the rest of the house. We then see Mike gyrating on Sharon, and something like that isn't shown at all nowadays. The real worlders agreed to boot the person who performs the worst, and this will be a thing in the next few seasons. But a lot of people still want to boot Steven, who is still disliked for the slap in his real world season. Lindsay keeps on justifying that deep down, he's a good person, and honestly, it kind of just rubs me the wrong way. Jaleesa asks Piggy about what happened in the inner circle, and she responds that the top three teams formed an alliance, which upsets Zelda. Emily throws Piggy under the bus about what happened. The two of them are arguing about what happened in front of the other woman as well. There's more arguing with the Road Rules team, with Giselda calling out to the couple about their alliance, and Chadwick ends up breaking up the alliance publicly. There's more Steven talk, but we move on to the next challenge called Musical Inner Tube Tango, where they walk around the pool with their hands on someone else's tube or on someone else's channel. When the music stops, people must place a tube on their neck, and the last one remaining wins. Clearly, the challenge is getting antsy, and Steven is elbowing slash hitting some of the girls, which is rubbing people the wrong way. Anyways, Lindsay and Stephen win the challenge, and absolutely no one is celebrating them. And they join Elka and Sean and Kwa and Mike for the real world in the inner circle, where Holly and Theo, Dan and Tara, and Emily and Timmy are in the inner circle for the Road Rules team. Due to Chadwick and Piggy being nominated to fourth, or them getting fourth in the challenge, the Road Rulers want to vote them off, and it's karma for booting Yes and Veronica, who are also fourth. Holly is trying to save her husband, and now wants the group at the bottom to go, which is Baloo and Chris. The real worlders easily come to the decision that the people at the bottom, i.e. Sharon and Mike, should go, since they want the strongest team against the Road Rulers at the final. The inner circle for Road Rules sends home Chadwick and Piggy, and the inner circle for Real World sends home Mike and Sharon. Chadwick did bring some drama with his limited time on the show with his political cutthroat move, and I honestly wanted him to stay a bit longer. And it's kind of sad that this is his only season, but it's clear that he couldn't deal with the backlash of all the stuff that he did, hence him being a one season wonder. And Piggy once again had an entertaining commentary, but I can see how she really wasn't meant for the overall overtly cutthroat nature of the show, hence it being her last season. But I had to look into this, and this wasn't her last season. Apparently, she was on the Inferno, but she left very early on, and they went out of their way to edit her out of the season. Sharon was fun at the Toka party, but I would be lying if I said she and Mike were really notable under any circumstance, so yeah. With the weather getting better, everyone is enjoying their time. Stephen approaches Coral to tell her that he will not make any more efforts to be friends, but there will be an effort for them to be cordial, and she tells him that she doesn't want to be in his negative force at all. This leads to another argument, and he tells her that she isn't a real black woman like his woman family members. And I don't really know what he's trying to say by this. Is he insinuating that she is mixed? Which wouldn't surprise me, but I don't know if she is or not. Is he insinuating that because she quote unquote doesn't act like the typical black woman in his eyes? I don't know what he means by this statement. Anyways, there's more discussion about the Road Rules winner splitting the money with everyone on the cast. I'm pretty sure the stuff like this happens today, but just not in the open or on camera. For the challenge, they have to climb the buoy in the vertical limit challenge. Dan and Kelly are the best, with Sean and Elka and Mike and Core being in the inner circle for World Rules, or sorry, the real world, and Holly and Theo, Dan and Tara, and Emily and Timmy are in the inner circle for the Road Rulers. It seems like Lindsay knows that herself and Steven are toast, which Coral is heavily pushing, but the Road Rules want to still boot the weaker teams, where Chris and Below seem to be in trouble. Steven and Lindsay are voted off by the real voters, and Blue and Chris are voted off by the road rulers. Some people are actually pissed off that the real voters did not follow the worst performers getting booted rule. Steven definitely brought the drama on this season, but he did make me very uncomfortable during the season, and he had some of the similar patterns that he had allegedly on his real world season. I definitely see why he was never brought back, and honestly, he shouldn't have been on this season. Lindsay seems like a likable and level headed person, but she never got another chance to prove herself on the challenge again. Bilu was entertaining during the short time she was on the season, and is a very unique challenger, especially with the baby situation. Chris is honestly just a dud, and I don't remember a thing about him whatsoever. Holly lashes out at her team for their decision and feeling backstabbed, and I think this is very ironic coming from her of all people. And Coral knows that she's really talking about her. The next challenge is called Slam Dunk, which sounds pretty self explanatory. But they have to bungee off the surface to drop a ball into one of the small circles. Adam and Jazila know that they are on the line to be cut, and I think they're ranging at the bottom, and they've been ranging at around the bottom the entire season. Theo and Holly are the only ones to score, and we have the same inner circle from the last round. Mike and Flora know that they're going home, and it's no shocker to anyone when Mike and Flora, as well as Adam and Lisa, are voted out of the house. Mike and Flora got a really poor edit on the season and really didn't do much of anything on the season. Mike was forgettable on 2000, in my opinion, and he's forgettable here too, so I just see why he never came back. Flora is also someone who just wasn't notable at all, but I did read something where apparently she pissed off the producers and the network by trying to protest for a better pay disparity after the season, but before it aired, so that's why she was under-edited. But she was under-edited on All Stars 4, so maybe she just doesn't provide much on the challenge atmosphere at all. Gisela, I finally have her name correctly, had a whole lot of personality, and I do like her dynamics with Adam. Adam wasn't as douchey as he was on, or I should say he will become on his future seasons, but is still present here. They're more memorable than many of the red t-shirt early boots, but they're not the biggest standouts compared to like Chadwick or a Baloo. or even a Steven, if that makes sense.
There's some sort of showman's build up between Tara and Mike, who talks about his Miss persona, clearly indicating the persona and career that he would eventually get into, since we all know that he becomes a wrestler after doing the show. And they spend a lot of time on this pairing in the episode. Holly knows that she and Josh are on the line if they do not win. Mark and Eric announce that after today's elimination, the final 12 will last until the very end of the season. The challenge is that they have to do a relay race, ladder of death, and bring two flags back to the starting point over a ladder. So the inner circle does not change whatsoever. So Coral and Mike, Elka and Sean, Danny and Kelly, Holly and Theo, Dan and Tara, and Emily and Timmy are deciding the last two couples to go home before the final. Becky and Norman and Holly and Josh are sent home. So Josh seems like a pretty fun personality, though he is pretty under the radar in general, and I did find Holly to be pretty likable and a middle of the road presence, though she's someone that I will forget about for sure after the season. And if I remember correctly, I do not think either one of them come back after this. So it kind of makes sense. And when it comes to Norman and Becky, they're fine enough, though I definitely see why neither come back, as they don't make much of a mark. Norman had his moment with Beth, but outside of that, there's really nothing else to talk about. Norman actually does come back on the continent, so it'll be interesting to see what he does there. Mike essentially thanks Thea for booting every fourth place world ruler, since it essentially did the real world team a favor. And there's this thing throughout the first half of the season where the world rulers booted all the fourth placers that were their opposition instead of keeping their team strong, whereas the real world intentionally booted the weakest members on their tiers. And this is a strategy that we'll see for the next few seasons. From what is shown at the beginning of the next episode, Holly forgave Emily for her messiness earlier on in the game regarding Chadwick, but it's clear that there's still some tension between the two of them. The next challenge is called Round 'em Up, where they engage in the typical horse tasks that humans are associated with, essentially. And I find this to be a fun and fine enough challenge. Sean and Elka win the challenge, and we learn that an email that Chadwick sent to Holly, which was pretty funny, where he blasts Emily for being the devil and rants about her for 2 pages. And this is the type of pettiness that I really love, and I wish they show more of on the challenge and just reality TV in general. And this is like one of those scripted moments that they do on like housewife shows and stuff like that. This is the real deal. Holly doesn't understand why Emily won't just say sorry for what happened and just admit that she made a game move at the expense of her friends. Though to me, it's clear that Emily isn't sorry, so she's not going to apologize for something that she isn't sorry for. Anyways, Sean catches us up about how he married Rachel since the first challenge season, and I think that was like 4 or 5 years ago at this point. They now have a baby, and I think he mentioned that they have another one on the way. I know they have 9 children now as I'm recording this, and Elka also talks about her now fiance, who was the person she was dating during her real world season. The challenge is that they have to move around all of the cars and you can't hit any of them, where one pair is handling all the cars, and it's called Rush Hour. I found this challenge to be pretty fun and cool, though a bit simplistic, and the winners of the challenge are Saran and Elka, which definitely should have been a given, since they got focused on so much in this episode, especially compared to the prior episodes. It is Mike's 21st birthday. It's crazy that the challenge doesn't cast anyone this young anymore, and it's a shame. And everyone is celebrating his birthday. The challenge is called Hands on Saturn, where the goal is to put their hand on the ice car and to outlast the other teams. Honestly, I find this challenge to be pretty brutal and kind of cruel, to be honest. Anyways, Holly is peeved that she was pulled from the competition, and everyone is happy that she and Sean lose. Wait, not Sean. Who is she partnered up with again? Holly is partnered with Theo. Yes, everyone is happy that Holly and Theo do not win this challenge. As they move on to the challenge, they now have to put a foot on the ice. Timmy ends up being on the ice block, which was. Sorry, he pees on the ice block, which was fun to watch, and he's also complaining about his bad genetics and how it will screw him over in the challenge. He is very funny. Diana and Tara end up winning the challenge, and Mike didn't even know that his foot wasn't touching the ice, since it was so frozen, and once it's so frozen, you can't feel whether something's on it or not. Mike decides to get belligerently drunk after the challenge, starts slamming the ice because he's so pissed off, and has a full-on meltdown in the car as they are being driven back, which continues when they're in the house and he turns into the Mist, calling people bitches and then snapping and throwing stuff in a room by himself, which Cora is calmly explaining to Elka, though she states in the confessional that she's pretty nervous. A part of me is wondering if Mike's definitely turning this up just so he can self-promote himself, or if this was a legit meltdown, or maybe it was a mixture of both. Mike continues his rant slash meltdown, but we do see him calm down in the next morning, and he does apologize to the castmates for it. The challenge that's happening next is called Sidekick Showdown, where the host asks them questions about their partner and they have to answer it correctly. And this will show how much they do or do not know about their partner, which they did this season with, but their initial Real World or World Rule season with. I don't have to say much about this episode in general, but it does show how well Cora and Mike know one another, since they end up winning the challenge. There's a lot of talk again about splitting the money so everyone can get something, no matter the result of the season, since as Timmy explained, it would be more about competing than greed, and it shows the mentality of the people in this era, but I also think it's because the prize money really isn't that high in the earlier seasons. Tara thinks that she is going to win, so she does not want to split up the money. We do learn that Emily and James are together apparently after last season, so all that screen time last season apparently wasn't for nothing. The challenge is called Blockhead, where you have to build a stack of blocks in the water, which Tim and Emily went, and I didn't really care much for this challenge. Tara literally speaks to her father about whether she should split the money or not, and asking about it, and Emily has some PTSD about stolen money regarding last season. The penultimate challenge is a wrestling challenge in a bunch of bubbles, while being tied to their partners' backs. Overall, it is a very fun challenge to watch, and we have quite a few fun matchups. Cora is freaking the hell out over the challenge, and Mike did way too much in the challenge, definitely due to his Miz persona that he's clearly trying to show off so he can self-promote himself as a future wrestler more, which ends up causing Holly to cry. Mike moons Theo, which is always fun enough, I guess, and they have this competitive banter throughout the entire episode, and honestly, just in the season overall. Holly officially decides to not take part in the splitting money arrangement. Wait, is it Tara or Emily? I don't really. Hold on. I think it is Holly who decides to not take part in it. Anyways, she's well nice by this, especially by Coral. The final involves a kayaking, deep sea diving relay race, and then there's some puzzle, and then climbing the rope to the finish line. Initially, the real world team think that they don't have a chance since it seems so physical. Emily and Tim struggle with the kayaking, causing Dan and Kelly to catch up. Alka struggles with the deep diving compared to Dan and Tara. Thea and Holly are doing the snowboarding just as Cora and Mike are, but they are causing the real world team to be behind. They are able to catch up since the road rules are stuck on the puzzle, and Mike takes over the puzzle, causing them to win as they move on from that and climb to the finish line where they win the season. Alrighty, so Timmy's definitely someone that I found to be very naturally funny and quirky throughout the season, and I really enjoyed his presence. You can tell that he wasn't hamming it up like some of the others were in this season. Emily is someone who I definitely found to be very interesting as she got into her fair share of drama, and then the conflict with Holly and Chadwick reemerged mid-season as well. I much preferred her in this season compared to last season overall. Dan, I really don't have much thoughts on in general. Honestly, I kind of confused him for the Dan of last season, where I believe they're just two different people, but he was fun enough Tara really didn't leave much of a mark, in my opinion. I forgot about her. I think she was under edited as well, and it makes sense why she was only on this season. Theo is definitely someone who had a lot of personality, and he was very good in the challenges. And he and Holly just kicked ass throughout a lot of the season, so I really appreciated his role on the season, and he's going to become a key figure in Era 1, so I am interested in seeing how that progresses. It's crazy that Holly only did one season because she was such a strong presence in the season, where she initially had that villain arc in the beginning with the move that she made against Veronica, and yes, then losing her husband, and then her still making it through the season. I found that to be a very interesting arc. It's just a shame that she never came back overall. But I appreciated what she brought to the season. Danny and Kelly are forgettable as hell, and I'm pretty sure they got the purple edit or something close to a purple edit. They clearly did well in the season because they won, and the inner circle didn't really change much, but in general, I don't remember an effing thing about them. Mike and Carl were definitely the main stars of the season, and it's very clear why they took over and kind of became the faces of Era 1, with the people who had most of the careers in Era 1. They definitely had their fair share of drama, personal moments. They definitely took over the game on a strategic and a competitive level with always being in an inner circle, and were definitely some of the biggest sources of entertainment in the season. It was interesting seeing Sean by himself, though he wasn't as memorable in comparison to the first season, but he definitely had his moments, and I guess this was a great way to end his challenge career before he became an uber Republican. Alka was a decent enough middle of the road presence. I'm interested in seeing how she does on the gauntlet, since she doesn't stand out that much compared to some of the others, but she isn't a red t-shirt like some of the other people on the season, especially some of the women. And that concludes my review of the Challenge Season 5 Battle of the Seasons 2002. Maybe I'll have more to say when the seasons have more of the normal challenge format, though this season was a huge step forward in that regard, as we finally have people going home on a regular basis, though it is through vote-offs and not eliminations. I do find the vote-offs very interesting because you can use it to be very strategic and cut out the biggest threats that are on your team, or you could just get rid of the weakest teams. And if you're one of the strongest teams, that's a good strategy as well. Of course, due to the fact that there are no eliminations, ending the physical elements or minimizing the physical elements to the show, it really doesn't stand out in the best way compared to what a normal challenge should be. And then I didn't like that they stopped the vote outs midway through the season. I get why they kept it, because they wanted somewhat of a similar format to the prior 4 seasons where everyone just competed in the finals and they competed so they could get the most points and whatnot. But I also think that they just didn't really know how to handle such a large cast like this. That's why sometimes they booted 2 pairs in an episode, sometimes they booted 3, so on and so forth. So it was very inconsistent in that way, and I think that is one of the reasons why midway they just stopped it altogether instead of pacing it out a bit better. That is something that they would get better at in future seasons. There was definitely a summer party college vibe to this, and I did like it, and there was a bit of drama throughout the season, though it wasn't anywhere near as much as some of the next few seasons that you will be approaching. Overall, I did enjoy the season. I think I would rewatch this season a few times, which I couldn't say for any of the prior seasons. And it does have that early to mid 2000s reality TV vibe that I really, really love. Anyways, I have another video of the challenge where I changed the cast of season 40 based on the amount of seasons they did, being the main qualifiers. I might post that video before this video, but both should be up pretty soon, and I'm looking forward to making a lot more challenge and non-challenge related videos. You can follow me on my Twitter, you can follow me on my other account, follow this account, like the videos, subscribe, all that information is in the bottom. Thank you all for supporting and watching, and I'll be back with more content soon. Bye!